If you didn't know there's a secret story about a lost astronaut that wasn't told in the movie, or that there was a different script that never came to be, you might want to keep watching.
Say my name. Iceberg. You're goddamn right.
Interstellar is a cinematic masterpiece that propels audiences on an extraordinary journey through the cosmos, transcending the boundaries of space and time. Let's dive deep into one of the most fascinating movies of all time. Welcome to the Interstellar Iceberg. The Wormhole. One of the elements that make the whole interstellar trip possible is the existence of wormholes. Without them, there's no interstellar travel, and here's why. Distances across the universe are unfathomable. Just consider that in the movie, it took Cooper and company 2 years to make it to Saturn, and we're talking that the movie takes place in 2067 with more advanced technology than ours. If it took the Endurance 2 years to reach Saturn, according to calculations, it would take more than 57,000 years to reach Proxima Centauri, the closest star to the Sun, and 19.9 billion years, more than the current age of the universe, to reach Andromeda, our neighbor galaxy. It is stated by Dr. Brand that the destination is located not in another solar system within the Milky Way, but in another galaxy. Given this, the only way somebody could reach another galaxy with our current technology is through a wormhole. I'll let Romilly explain what a wormhole is.
So they say you want to go from here to there. So a wormhole bends space like this, so you can take a shortcut through a higher dimension.
The Blight. The Blight is a mysterious crop pathogenic organism that wiped out most of the Earth's plant life, particularly affecting staple crops like wheat. As a result, food shortages are widespread, and humanity faces the prospect of extinction due to the inability to sustain itself. On top of that, this microorganism breathes nitrogen, and when it thrives, it makes air contain less oxygen, making it impossible for humans to survive. It is also the cause of the dust storms we see, as the microorganism caused the desertification of green areas. This is the main reason why NASA focused on the possibility of inhabiting other worlds. Plan A. Plan A involves finding a new habitable planet for humanity to colonize. NASA identifies several potential candidates in distant galaxies through a wormhole near Saturn. The plan is to send a crew of astronauts through the wormhole to explore these potential new homes for humanity. If a suitable planet is found, the intention is to transport the remaining population of Earth to that planet to ensure the survival of the species. The critical problem with Plan A is that it requires solving the gravitational equation, which would provide a method for lifting massive space stations and a significant portion of Earth's population into space to travel through the wormhole. This equation is considered unsolvable by conventional means, as it requires information contained inside a black hole. Plan B. Plan B is a backup strategy in case Plan A fails. It involves preserving the human species through a different approach. Instead of transporting people from Earth, Plan B involves sending fertilized human embryos to a habitable planet through the wormhole. The embryos would be incubated and raised by machines or robotic systems on the new planet until they grow into a new generation of humans. The hope is that this method would allow humanity to continue a new world even if people on Earth can't be saved. Gargantua. A black hole is a region that appears when a very small and dense object deforms spacetime, causing a deformation from which not even light can escape. Gargantua is a black hole, but a special one. I won't go into detail, but Gargantua is what is known as a Kerr black hole, a spinning massive black hole that, counterintuitively, is not as violent as smaller black holes, and this is one of the reasons why Cooper was barely able to survive it. The reason why Gargantua is relevant to the plot is that it holds the key to solving the gravity equation that could help humans manipulate gravity in order for humans to leave Earth. Gargantua is also the reason why time dilation exists on Miller's planet, as black holes exert enormous gravitational forces, and the stronger the gravity, the slower time ticks for those close to this force. Do not go gentle into that good night.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
Author Dylan Thomas is said to have dedicated this poem to his dying father as a way for him not to give up easily against the inevitability of death. The good night of the poem refers to death, and rage against the dying of the light means to fight till the last moment. The fragility of humankind is more noticeable in Interstellar. As Earth is condemned to dying, salvation lies hidden in the dark heart of the deadliest objects in the universe, and it's up to a handful of humans to keep the hope of life in the universe alive. Exoplanets. Planets outside our solar system were speculative in the past, as we didn't have the right tools and techniques to detect that there were planets besides the ones in our solar system. Nonetheless, as of September 1st, 2023, we have 5,506 confirmed exoplanets, and the number keeps increasing as time goes by. In our universe, it is completely possible to find exoplanets like in Interstellar, and even more exotic ones where glass rains sideways, with the density of cotton candy, or made almost entirely of diamond. Being able to identify habitable planets outside our solar system might not be as difficult, but traveling to them is another story, as the laws of physics and our current technology don't allow for it. Lazarus Missions. The Lazarus Missions were a set of missions in which 12 NASA astronauts were sent 10 years prior to the events of the movie to the wormhole that appeared near Saturn in order to explore the 12 worlds previously discovered by probes. The following astronauts were sent through the wormhole: Dr. Wong, Dr. Hale, Dr. Morin, Dr. Yashin, Dr. Lee, Dr. Oita, Dr. Ostro, Dr. Pila, Dr. Samov, Dr. Edmonds, Dr. Miller, and Dr. Mann. They all had the mission to find out if the planet they arrived in was hospitable for life. If so, they would send a signal that NASA would receive in order for the next mission, the Endurance, to travel there and establish a colony of humans. If the planet were hostile, their only choice would be to accept their fate and die alone in a faraway galaxy. There is an untold story of one of these astronauts that was never told in the movie, and it's one of the most epic of them all. More on that later. Gravity. We know how it works, but nobody really knows what exactly it is, or where it comes from. It plays an important role in Interstellar, as defying gravity is the key for humanity to leave Earth. It serves as a means of communication for Cooper to manipulate certain objects in Murph's room. It's also the reason why Cooper and Brand didn't age in comparison to the rest of humans, who were far from the influence of Gargantua, as the black hole exerts an enormous amount of gravity that dilates time. Time dilation. It's understandable to think that for each minute I experience, you and everybody else also experience the same amount of time. But there are two factors that can change this: speed and gravity. To put it in simple words, the faster you move, the slower you will experience time in relation to those who are not moving as fast as you. This is exemplified in what is known as the twin paradox, in which one twin stays on Earth while the other one travels at a speed close to the speed of light for a year and then comes back, just to realize that the twin that stayed on Earth has become an old man while he has aged only 1 year. In terms of gravity, the same time dilation happens, but not due to speed, but to gravity. The stronger gravity is, the slower your clock will tick in relation to somebody who's not subjected to this strong force. This is the very reason why when Cooper and the crew arrive on the water world, each hour they experience represents 7 years on Earth, as Gargantua is exerting that force on the planet. Mountains. Laura Miller was a biologist and astronaut who flew in the Lazarus Missions. She arrived in the watery world, just to realize that her planet was sterile. In this place, gravity was 130% that of Earth, but the main feature of this place was time dilation. The theme that plays in the background represents one Earth day with each ticking sound. The fact that they get stranded on this planet for around 3 hours cost them 23 years, 4 months and 8 days. If for some reason a human experienced 1 year on Miller's planet, the rest of humankind would experience 61,320 years, more than 10 times the age of our current civilization. Mann's plan. Dr. Hugh Mann was a renowned scientist and leader of the Lazarus Missions. One of the 3 initially promising worlds alongside Miller's and Edmund's was Mann's planet, a frozen world where this astronaut landed 10 years prior to the launch of the Endurance mission. This is the second planet that Cooper and company visit on the grounds that a signal was sent from there to indicate that the planet could sustain life. Dr. Mann had to wait roughly 35 years in order to be rescued, even though he wasn't supposed to, as he discovered that his planet wasn't the right one for sustaining life. His duty, knowing this information, was to face death like all the other Lazarus astronauts, whose planets were presumed hostile to life. But not being prepared to face this destiny, he pressed the button to bait NASA into thinking his planet was promising just to be rescued and steal their spacecraft. The Dust Bowl. This phenomenon refers to a series of dust storms that occurred in the 30s due to droughts and other factors. This is exactly what's happening on Earth in Interstellar, as we see severe dust storms hitting Earth's population. And as far as I understand, these are caused by the Blight, as it consumes plant life, leaving nothing but soil and dust. It is worth noticing that the people who appear at the beginning of the movie talking about how they have been living through these dust storms are not acting. There are people who actually went through that, not in the movie, but in real life back in the 30s. Unknown Galaxy. If you didn't pay attention, you might think that the solar system where the wormhole leads is within our Milky Way galaxy, but you would be wrong. It is stated several times that wherever those planets are lie in a distant galaxy. That distant galaxy cannot be Andromeda, because that's the closest galaxy to the Milky Way. This means that whatever galaxy the Endurance and the Lazarus Missions visited was unimaginably farther than we initially thought. I'm pretty sure that a study of that system's sky could have provided data about where exactly that galaxy is, but this was never stated in the movie. The Fifth Dimension. Let's quickly talk about dimensions. A zero-dimensional point is the most basic spatial entity. It has no length, width, or height. It is simply a mathematical location without physical extent. The first dimension adds the concept of length to a point. In this dimension, objects can move along a single straight line. The second dimension introduces the concept of width, allowing objects to move within a flat plane, such as in a 2D video game. The third dimension adds height to the length and width, forming a 3D space. Objects can move freely in three-dimensional space, and it's the dimension we experience in our everyday lives. Now, the fourth dimension adds another dimension that our brains cannot conceive, because we are three-dimensional creatures whose brains develop to perceive three dimensions. However, there are 3D representations of what a 4D object, such as a tesseract or hypercube, would look like, in the same fashion as there are 2D representations of 3D objects such as cubes. The reason why I'm talking about higher dimensions is because there's a civilization that placed the wormhole near Saturn that allowed humankind to travel to a distant galaxy. Without their existence, interstellar travel would have been completely impossible to achieve in the movie, and perhaps the same applies in real life, as distances in our universe are so vast that not even traveling at the speed of light would be enough to visit other solar systems, let alone galaxies within a reasonable time. The fifth dimension is as hard to imagine as it would be for a one-dimensional creature. It is never stated in the movie how such creatures can even exist. This is a projection of what a five-dimensional object would look like. The 9 Lost Astronauts. We're familiar with some of the crew members of the Lazarus Missions, them being Laura Miller, Wolf Edmonds, and Dr. Hugh Mann. The first one dies because of the tidal waves of her planet, the second one because of a rock slide that fell on his station, and the latter from an explosion when he tried to take control of the Endurance. So, what about the other 9 astronauts? Well, we don't hear anything about 9 of them, and they're presumed to be dead, as most probably they didn't send any signal to NASA due to their planets not being suitable for life. However, as I stated before, there's one astronaut whose story is insane, but we'll see that later. Also, the fact that they didn't communicate with Earth isn't a synonym that they died. I mean, most probably they did, but there's always a possibility that some failure in their equipment led them to be completely unable to communicate, even if their planet was the right one. A creepier solution to this is that one of the planets could have already been inhabited by some sort of hostile civilization or species that ended the astronauts' lives. Ghost. At the beginning of the movie, there is mention of a supernatural entity Murph calls a ghost. She explains that this entity has been knocking her books off. Not only is it interesting that a movie that tries to be as scientifically accurate as possible mentions a supernatural entity, but also who this ghost is in reality. As it turns out, the ghost is none other than Cooper himself, trying to communicate through space and time with Murph through the Tesseract in order to provide her with the quantum data that TARS gathered from the black hole to solve the gravity equation that would allow humanity to leave Earth. Human extinction. As precious and rare as it is, life is very fragile, and more in the context of Interstellar. There were so many things that could have gone wrong in the movie. Even if everything had turned out well and landed on Edmund's planet, they would have never been able to save people on Earth because they would have never had to traverse the black hole and find the quantum data, so they would have starved and suffocated. O'Neill's cylinder. At the end of Interstellar, we can see that Cooper's station has a very weird shape as it resembles a donut. In spite of its shape, there's science behind it, similar to that of the Endurance. One of the biggest challenges for humans to survive outside of Earth is gravity, as our bodies aren't made for zero-gravity environments, and experiencing that would cause muscle atrophy, bone density loss, and immune system suppression, among many other problems. However, this problem can be solved by creating a centrifugal force that would act as artificial gravity, as exemplified by the Endurance and Cooper station. Self-preservation instinct. As living creatures, we will always look for ways to thrive and survive, especially when we are in danger. This instinct is put to the test several times with certain characters, but the clearest example is Dr. Mann's change of heart. He's described as being extremely brave, a leader for the rest of the astronauts who crossed the wormhole with the Lazarus Missions. However, as stated by Dr. Mann, he never considered his planet not be the right one for life, and once he encountered a sterile place with no way to escape or see a human being ever again, he pressed the button for him to be rescued. Later on in this video, we will see the struggles of this astronaut previous to his awakening by the Endurance crew. 2008 script. We're familiar with Interstellar, but before it became what it is, there was a different story in a script written in 2008. I'll read a summary of what I found. The script opens up with a sequence featuring a neutron star falling into a black hole, sending ripples of gravity waves across the galaxy, which opens up a wormhole in Sol's solar system. LIGO physicists at Caltech scramble to find out what some signals from space are. NASA then arrives to assist the physicists in finding out what it means. Anson and a young John Brand are present when they discover that there's a wormhole somewhere in the solar system. The script then flashes forward 50 years, where we see an object falling toward the Earth. In Central California, we find Cooper and his children attempting to repair the bus for the New York Yankees prior to attending their baseball game, where they see an object falling out of the sky, crash landing somewhere. In the morning, Cooper's father-in-law Donald tells him to attend a parent-teacher conference. On the way to school, their truck tire blows and they stop to fix it. When a Chinese drone flies over, they take the truck to capture it and steal its power cells. Afterward, Cooper talks to the school principal and Murph's teacher. There, he learns that the world is turning its back on their history. A friend asks Cooper to investigate a crashed black box space probe at a beach near Galveston, Texas. The probe has NASA markings. He returns home, attempts to pull data off it, and discovers an image of an ice planet. At the request of Murph, Cooper flies the probe to a special facility built on Santa Cruz Island off the coast of Los Angeles, where he discovers the last remnants of NASA. Cooper is selected by Dr. Brandt to go along with 3 scientists, Amelia, Doyle, Roth, and 2 robots, Case and Tars, to fly through the wormhole to the icy planet. Cooper joins the rest of the crew for the launch, after a painful goodbye to his children, where he gives one of his sons a watch to keep as promise of Coop's return. They reach the wormhole and see their ship and bodies distorted by space-time distortion. On the other side of the wormhole, they enter a new solar system to find 2 black holes in orbit of each other. They navigate between the black holes and end up on the ice planet. Tars is lost during the transit between the black holes. While on the ice planet, they look around for clues and discover a shelter made by the Chinese government. Apparently, the Chinese arrived prior to the US and set up shop. However, all human Chinese personnel have died, as evidenced by the presence of nearby graves. They find out why these researchers died. A neutron star orbiting the black holes wasn't detected on their first patrols. This star sends out powerful radiation every 24 hours that deposits on the ice planet. The team goes inside for shelter before the star returns. Case drills a hole in the ice, which opens a hole underneath them, taking them deep underground. The team then discovers alien life in the walls, which absorbs and lives off the radiation from the neutron star's X-rays when it passes by. After the neutron star makes its pass, the alien life forms are discovered to be small, but live as colonies and can take shapes in larger forms. One of the scientists decides to get a sample, disrupting the alien life, which causes them to give chase. Afterward, the team discovers a secret underground Chinese bunker installation. The team finds out that the installation was supposed to keep all Chinese people there, but no one showed up because all the researchers had died, and only Chinese robots remained. While at the installation, the team discovers a black box that generates gravity. They decide to keep it, but the Chinese robots disagree and chase them. Case decides to sacrifice itself so the rest can move forward. The team then finds out another emergency. Within a decade, a smaller black hole, tiny compared to Pantagruel and Gargantua, will pass by the ice planet. The planet's orbit will destabilize, and it will fall beneath Pantagruel's Rochelle limit and horizon. The team decides to leave the planet immediately, but get stuck in the orbit of one of the black holes and end up inside the event horizon after leaving the planet. Time slows down for them and decades pass by as minutes. Suddenly, another wormhole opens up for them inside the black hole and takes them to a hyperdimension that transports them to a huge space station built by the Chinese over the course of 4,000 years, where Tars had remained since they lost it. In the meantime, at the Chinese space station, they find technologies very advanced created by the Chinese robots, who have been on the station for thousands of years. Amelia decides to take Tars and explore the galaxy through the wormhole network, while Cooper and Doyle decide to leave and go back in time using the advanced technologies. Cooper promises Amelia that he will come back for her. It is discovered that time travel is possible, but humans can't go through it. Cooper tells Doyle that he will be killed if he goes through, but Doyle refuses and locks Cooper in a lander and decides to go in by himself. Cooper is launched away from the wormhole and Doyle goes through. Doyle is killed and his ship destroyed, but the black box survives, as well as his spaceship debris. A sequence is shown that reveals that Cooper's youngest son, Murphy Cooper, returned to the Santa Cruz Island facility years later and discovered the black box. Decades pass, but Murph spends nearly 20 years attempting to solve the gravity box. Later, his daughter Emily ends up actually solving gravity, thus saving the human race. Unbeknownst to Cooper, he returns to Earth 2,000 years after he had left. The Earth is an icy wasteland. He returns to what used to be his house and releases the alien form on the world where it thrives. Cooper remains there to die as he falls unconscious. He reawakens inside the medical bay of an immense space station orbiting high above Earth. Cooper discovers that he's considered a hero and gets to meet his great-great-great-grandson Anthony Cooper Welling, who gives him back the watch he gave Murphy centuries ago. An untold amount of time passes, and Cooper begins to feel alone in this future. He decides one day to take himself and a robot heavily modeled on TARS and set out to find Amelia as he had promised her. According to Cooper, wormholes are not naturally occurring phenomena. Even if they are theoretically possible, somebody had to put it there. And that's exactly what happened, but the question is who exactly? In the beginning, it was believed that it was a superior alien civilization whose intention was to save humankind, but in reality, it wasn't aliens, it was humans. Here arises a paradox with no apparent explanation. Without the aid of them, humans wouldn't have been capable of traveling to another solar system to find a new home for the species. Without humans being able to survive and evolve in the universe, they wouldn't have been able to place the wormhole in the first place to save humanity. How is it that there were extra-dimensional humans able to control space-time and save their past selves from demise? As much as I tried, I couldn't find a definite answer. What we're facing here is what is known as a bootstrap paradox. We can see an example of this in the movie Somewhere in Time. An old woman gives a watch to a playwright who later travels back in time and meets the same woman when she was young. He gives her the same watch that she will later give to him. The watch has no real origin. Absolute Zero. Absolute Zero is the prequel to Interstellar, written in the form of a comic book by Christopher Nolan himself, and it focuses on Dr. Mann's story after he arrived on the ice planet. We can see Dr. Mann waking up from his hypersleep chamber and talking to Kip, his robot companion that we can see dismantled in Interstellar. Due to the harsh conditions of his planet upon arrival, Mann knew that most probably his planet wasn't the right one to sustain life. Although admired by many, we can see a glimpse of Mann's evil plan in a dialogue that he has with Kip, in which he asks the robot if he has made the data models he asked for. Kip says he has, but that he doesn't understand why Mann wants those hypothetical models. It's clear that those models were made in order to fool NASA into rescuing Mann, in spite of knowing that his planet wasn't suitable for life. Mann had previously sent a probe to see if there was a surface that wasn't covered by endless layers of ice, so Kip and Mann decided to go and look for the probe. Unfortunately, the probe's data that was further analyzed by Kip revealed that there was nothing, only frozen clouds, ammonia, and no surface. Dr. Mann starts smashing the storage device out of frustration. Kip prevents Mann from further damaging the data, as they would need that information, but that's far from Mann's plans, as he intended to send not that information, but the one he asked Kip to make. The story closes with Mann deactivating Kip for good, and that's the last we know from him until the Endurance crew wakes him up. Interstellar, text adventure game. If you thought that Absolute Zero was intriguing, let me introduce you to the story told by this game. As its name indicates, it was a text-adventure game that expands on the story of the Lazarus Missions and was available at interstellarmovie.com/adventure, where you play the role of one of the crew members of the Lazarus Missions in the company of Plex, your robot partner. After spending 2.5 years in cryosleep, your pod lands on a planet with a mass similar to Earth and with a temperature of 34.4 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, during the landing, the oxygen generator got damaged, compromising the supply of this element. Later on, you set on a journey to set 4 probes on different locations while overcoming difficult obstacles. After completing this, an earthquake occurs, damaging the components and increasing the levels of CO2 inside the station. Once you solve a puzzle to correct this damage, you go out and collect the data your probes gathered in the meantime. Unfortunately, the data is everything but promising, but in spite of this, he goes outside once again. The astronaut climbs the stone hill as it collapses under him, and upon reaching the cliff, he sees that the entire horizon from end to end is a molten lava ocean, and that the entire dwarf planetoid he is standing on is being presently obliterated as it has trespassed the Rochelle limit of a larger planet, meaning that the planetoid cannot remain stable at such a close orbit and starts disintegrating. It is literally an apocalyptic description. The astronaut defiantly shows us humanity's indomitable spirit as he plants the Earth flag on top of the cliff, just before the planetoid finally explodes, with such energy that he is finally annihilated. Thanks a lot for watching the video. I'm sure you'll find a lot of interesting content in this channel, so please subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.